Our first Epic of Remnant chapter has just dropped, and it includes a plethora of new servants. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with another new servant spotlight for Shinjuku. Today we're going to be taking a look at the cutest, best little pup on the throne of heroes, Shinjuku Avenger. We'll be examining his stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize him effectively, and an overall grade comparing him to how he stacks up to the other 4-star servants. Now, onto Avenger stats. Shinjuku Avenger has a max HP of 9,949 and a max attack of 10,628. When accounting for the Avenger class modifier, his true attack becomes 11,690. There's only one other 4-star Avenger to compare him to, and that's Gorgon, and unfortunately both his attack and HP are lower than hers. However, when compared to all the other servants, Shinjuku Avenger has one of the highest attack stats of any 4-star. He also has the second lowest HP stat of any 4-star, so he's very much a servant that operates in extremes with his glass cannon stat line. Taking a look at his skills, his first skill is Fallen Demon rank A+. It increases his crit star gather rate for one turn between 600% and 1200%, and it also increases his defense between 20 and 40% for a single turn, both depending on level. His second skill is Monstrous Strength rank B. It increases his attack for 2 turns between 10 and 30% depending on level. And finally, his last skill is One Cloaked in Death. It decreases the death resist of an enemy for one turn between 30 and 50%. It also decreases their attack for one turn between 10 and 30% and removes all buffs, all depending on level. Taking a look at his passives, he has Avenger rank A, which increases his NP gain when receiving damage by 20% and decreases debuff resist of all allies except himself by 10%. He has Oblivion Correction rank B, which increases his crit strength by 8%, and Self-Restoration Magical Energy rank B, which increases his NP gauge by 3.5% per turn. Taking a look at his deck and Noble Phantasm, Shinjuku Avenger has a Quick Arts deck with Quick Arts Buster and a Quick Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm, Freeren Schrockvictor, applies sure hit for one turn and deals significant damage to a single enemy between a 1200% and 2000% damage modifier, and it also has between a 60 and 100% chance to inflict death depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at his cards, we see that his Quick card hits 3 times, his Arts hits 2 times, his Buster hits 2 times, and his Extra attack hits 5 times. He has an NP gain rate of 0.79% and a star rate of 6%. This adds up to decent NP gain and good star generating. His Arts cards are subpar because they only have 2 hits, but the high hit counts on his Quick, Extra, and Noble Phantasm make up for that and give him above average star generating. Shinjuku Avenger follows the trend of all Avengers, that being ridiculously high attack in exchange for some low HP. So the usual caveats apply here, but surprisingly enough, he isn't as fragile as you might think. Fallen Demon of Heaven grants him a hefty 40% defensive buff for a single turn, which makes him pretty tanky and capable of taking a crit or 2 without blowing up, at least for one turn. It also grants him a big boost to star gather rate, something essential to Avengers given their lack of class advantage. His third skill, Those Shrouded in Death, also has some good synergy with his first. It decreases enemy attack by 30%, and between this skill and the defense buff from your first skill, you can effectively reduce damage done to Shinjuku Avenger by 70%, enough to even tank some enemy Noble Phantasms. This skill is also going to remove an enemy's buffs and decreases their death resist, giving you a really nice bit of utility. And finally, his Soul attack buff comes in the form of Monstrous Strength, a 2-turn 30% damage buff. This is the exact same skill that Rider Medusa has, and while it isn't amazing, it does add a nice bit of extra damage to your Noble Phantasm. Skill priority for Shinjuku Avenger should be Monstrous Strength first, because that damage buff scales very well with level, followed by Fallen Demon of Heaven for the more reliable crit absorb and bulk, and then finally Those Shrouded in Death, because death resist doesn't really matter that much and it is a very situational skill. Shinjuku Avenger's Noble Phantasm is a single target quick Noble Phantasm that pierces evade and has a chance to inflict death. The chance to land the death effect is very weak, nowhere near as good as Shiki's, so it's not even really worth considering. However, the evade pierce is a good attribute to have, and being a single target quick Noble Phantasm means that it can potentially hit very hard. I say potentially because that's where we run into a bit of a theme with Shinjuku Avenger. He's very underdeveloped. Single target quick Noble Phantasms are strong, but because he lacks an NP interlude and has subpar attack buffs, he doesn't hit for very much unless he receives some kind of quick buff from a support. Another underdeveloped aspect of his kit is his instant death abilities. They're really weak. Instant death as a mechanic itself is bad, but even considering that, Shinjuku Avenger's chances of inflicting death are abysmal, and they don't make any real functional or practical sense in his skill set. Thankfully though, he does possess one ability that some Avengers don't, Star Absorb. This is tremendously helpful for setting up a turn of big burst damage or using the crits to charge your NP very quickly. When Shinjuku Avenger is able to crit, much like Shinjuku Archer, he becomes a vastly better servant. His star generating is also decent enough to where he can set himself up for his own crits without necessarily having to rely on a big star generator for a support. But keep in mind that the Star Absorb only lasts for a single turn, so for most of the battle you'll have no easy access to crit stars, and Shinjuku Avenger's only crit damage buff is from his passive. Without crits, he won't be doing very much damage despite his insane attack stat because he lacks class advantage against anything but rulers and berserkers. Skill uptime is a problem across the board for Shinjuku Avenger. Even though all of his skills have low cooldowns, they only last for a turn or two, meaning that they're going to be inactive between 60 to 80% of the time. On the bright side though, he does have very strong utility with his buff removal skill, and it is very helpful in tough fights, and especially if you're facing rulers who usually have a lot of annoying buffs like invincibility. Shinjuku Avenger has good NP gain and star generating as well, making him somewhat self-sufficient and capable of noble phantasming multiple times, provided you can get brave chains. He also does have decent survivability thanks to his defensive buff and his attack down, so even if he does lack hard defense, putting him with servants that grant defensive buffs can easily nullify 90 or even 100% of the damage done to him. While we're on the topic, let's talk about good pairings. Shinjuku Avenger only works as an attacker in an offensive role, so you're going to want to pair him with servants that can support him. There are two major types of support that Shinjuku Avenger needs, quick damage and defense. Any servant that can grant a quick buff to him is going to be invaluable. I recommend Atlanta, Skyhawk, and Caesar. As I mentioned, he desperately needs quick buffs, and quick supports are slim for now, so Atlanta and Skyhawk are going to be your best buffers. Atlanta can also do a fairly good job of star generating, while Skyhawk is excellent for boss killing and stunning, so bring her on the harder quests. Caesar doesn't have a quick buff, but he is excellent for buffing your non-noble phantasm damage and your noble phantasm damage thanks to his charisma and tactics, and he can even buff your crit strength and star drop rates, both things that greatly benefit Shinjuku Avenger and make him a lot more consistent. For defensive supports, I suggest Mosh, Fuma, and Tristan. Really, any servant with defensive buffs is going to work well, but Mosh in particular has a plethora of buffs and damage cuts that can make Shinjuku Avenger virtually incapable of receiving damage when paired with his own buffs. Tristan and Fuma don't have any defensive buffs, but they can provide evade to Shinjuku Avenger, and both work as good star generators too. Shinjuku Avenger's Bondcraft Essence is Beyond the Wilderness. It improves the quick card effectiveness and NP gain of all allies by 10%. A very good craft essence to have, but ultimately you're better off focusing on either buffing your quick card effectiveness or your crit consistency. For an overall improvement to damage, go with craft essences that buff quick cards like Imaginary Around, Dumplings Over Flowers, or A Moment of Silence. Imaginary Around and Dumplings Over Flowers are going to give you the most damage, while A Moment of Silence will assist you greatly with your NP gain. If you want to improve your crit consistency, then go with Dangerous Beast, Sealed Designation Enforcer, and Talk of the Hot Sands. Dangerous Beast is going to help you a lot with star generating if you want more volume, while Sealed Designation Enforcer and Talk of the Hot Sands are going to work towards improving your RNG for gathering crit stars. For some future proofing, CKT is excellent for granting you damage, while Star of Camelot is going to improve the reliability of your crits. Overall, Shinjuku Avenger is a much more consistent and self-sufficient crit servant than Gorgon. He has a bit of tankiness thanks to his defense buff and attack debuff, and he's capable of dealing a lot of damage if he's set up properly. But there are so many aspects of him that need to be improved, including long cooldowns, no true crit damage buff, no hard defense, an instant death mechanic that's extremely ineffective, and lackluster damage buffs. So he gets a B- from me. Shinjuku Avenger can occasionally be strong if you work around his cooldowns and maximize his strengths, but he is greatly lacking in some key areas. If he were to receive an NP interlude and a better damage buff for himself, he would be infinitely better. And those are my thoughts on Shinjuku Avenger. I don't think he's an elite servant, but I do think he's an elite companion, so if you do plan on rolling for him, treat him well. And as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you guys in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.